But our lead this hour from the Bayou in New Orleans, about 36 hours or so after that whack job terrorist killed a bunch of innocent people on the streets of the Big Easy. They played football because we need our football. The Sugar Bowl was played at the Superdome. It's got a corporate name, but they don't pay us to say it, so we'll just call it the Superdome. The final piece to this round of the college football playoff. We are down to the Final Four. We are down now to the Final Four. Now, did you watch? It's an earlier start for those of us that work the dreaded overnight shift. Not very convenient, but we made it work. We made it work. Maybe you missed it. So Riley Leonard. Who? Riley Leonard. That's a quarterback. He did have a passing touchdown. Didn't have much else. And Jaden Harrison putting on the afterburners with an electric kickoff for 98 yards to pay dirt. Touchdown, Jesus. Notre Dame getting it done. The defense, that's really the story here. The defense holding that up 23-10. The final, a win over number 2 Georgia in the college football playoff.
Number 2.
Yes, and Georgia actually took a number 2 out on the field offensively in the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff there at the Sugar Bowl. So that means now that the 5th-seeded Fighting Irish are into the Final Four of college football, and we will discuss that more as we go forward. But let's talk about what we witnessed in this game, and the better story is in the losing locker room. So the question for the esteemed panel, which you were part of, who gets the blame? Who gets the blame for Kirby Smart's Georgia Bulldogs putting up a lackluster offensive performance? 10 points in a college football playoff game? 10? All right, so I've got Rolaids, the Vitamin Shop, and Patternicity. And we will put all of these things together, and we will beat the odds. Something that I have failed to do most of this year on the TV show, Benny versus the Penny. So hopefully here on radio, we will beat the odds. But my first thought here, the main thing that stood out, and I assume you had the same thought. We probably were thinking the same thing watching this game. There was just a lack of explosive ordnance to finish the job. Like, Georgia outgained Notre Dame by not an outrageous amount, but they had almost 300 yards of offense and 296 if you look at the final number. And Notre Dame had about 50-something yards less than that. However, when you break it down unscientifically, Kirby Smart's team, they were lacking what? They were lacking that Rolaids relief man to come in there and close the drives out. Georgia was without their starting quarterback, Carson Beck, who looked really depressed to be there. Did not look happy to be there. Probably wanted to be playing video games somewhere. But Carson Beck there on the sidelines, he was injured. His elbow was all mangled in the SEC title game, so he sat out. He was replaced by Gunner. Now, Gunner Stockton is the name. That's a backup quarterback, and I hate to say it, but the guy that calls the show from the Walmart in northern Minnesota named Gunner would have done just as well. Gunner Stockton, the backup there, had his opportunity. And as we know in life, we learn this when we're young, right? The whole key to life is taking advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. He had the opportunity, he had the stage all to himself, and he had 234 yards, but only one touchdown. It was okay. It just wasn't good enough. And Georgia collectively, it's like they were doing a commercial for Butterfingers. The game is confirmation of the Maller Show golden rule that most games are lost, not won. Georgia was stopped on all 3 of their 4th down attempts in this game. They lost not 1 but 2 fumbles, one of them deep in Notre Dame territory and one inside their own 20-yard line. And the Bulldogs also crumbled when Notre Dame dropped the Acme cartoon anvil on top of them. The score was tied at 3. And then all of a sudden, in the span of actual game time, it was 54 seconds, the Fighting Irish put up 17 points in 54 seconds of game time. Georgia never recovered. Now they have plenty of time to rest up and have players enter the transfer portal and get new players and all that. They will play their next football game at home in Georgia there against Marshall on August 30th. Tickets are not available. All right, now turning the page. So on the other side, the winning locker room, what do the eyes tell you about Marcus Freeman's Fighting Irish? As they get the big win here. So I did not expect much from Notre Dame. I'm not going to lie to you here and tell you something different. I would tell you, based on this performance, I don't get too carried away because it was against a backup quarterback, but it does appear these are not your daddy's Golden Domers at this point. It's been, I did the math on it, it's been at least a generation since Notre Dame has looked like this in meaningful games, not afraid to get their hands dirty. And it's almost like they went down, Marcus Freeman went down to the vitamin shop, and he ordered some supplements, maybe did it online, and got the vim and vigor. There was some ruggedness to Notre Dame, toughness, robustness. Now, how much of this is legit and how much of this is you played a backup quarterback? What does it all mean? But Notre Dame wins this game, and the quarterback, Riley Leonard, had 90 yards passing. You won a big-time college football game, and your starting quarterback statistically was outplayed by the other guy, but 90 yards passing, averaged less than 4 yards per pass. Less than 4 yards per pass, passer rating below 85. And now he did have 80 yards on the ground and all that, but Notre Dame, bunch of penalties, had 10 penalties in this game. So that's a big, ugly win. But it smells like freshly baked cinnamon rolls when you look at your tablet or your phone. And is anything in life that tastes better than freshly baked cinnamon rolls, like right out of the oven? Right? That's one of the, I don't anyone that doesn't like cinnamon rolls. And I believe if you don't like cinnamon rolls, you're likely a lizard person. Right? You're not human. It's one of the great smells and just wonderful. Now looking ahead, the Irish opened up as a 1.5-point favorite over LeVar Arrington's Penn State Nittany Lions, while Ohio State, they remain the overall favorite to win the college football playoff at plus 110. Now, there's a lot of people below the Mason-Dixon line that are going to need some therapy here because at this point, the great hope for the Southeastern Conference, if you look at the Final Four, you got Notre Dame and Penn State on one side, Ohio State from the Big Ten, and who? Texas. That is the Longhorns, the much-maligned Longhorns, who many snickered at in SEC land. There's no way they're going to be able to compete. Come on, what's wrong with you? Remember when it was announced years ago that Oklahoma and Texas were going to the Southeastern Conference, people were very defensive. Southern fried football, not going to work, all this stuff. Everything's upside down. While Oklahoma does blow, but Texas is legit, appears. I still have my issues with Steve Sarkisian, though. But that goes back to him being a raging alcoholic at USC. But other than that, hey, listen, good for him. Good for him. All right, now, last word. Take a couple of steps back. Now, if you're driving, don't do that because you'll get in an accident. And if you're in bed because you have insomnia, don't do that because you might fall down. It's dark. But you've got Oregon, Boise State, Georgia, and Arizona State. What do they all have in common? They were the four teams that got the bye in the college football playoff, and then they said bye. They got the bye, and then they said bye-bye to the college football playoff. All of them suffering losses. Only the Sun Devils kept the game realistically close. Even that, though, was a 2-score lead for Texas in the fourth quarter and a couple of crazy 2-point conversions and some weird things happening involving the idiot kicker to allow Arizona State to get to overtime and double overtime and all that. That's where we are. So the question, every team, every one of them, every team that had the bye in the college football playoff, a loser. Done. So is this something or nothing? Because my pals who love college football, this is terrible. You don't want the bye. This is it. This is proof. So I'm not as hardcore as you might be when it comes to this, but I'm going to give you my 10 cents. Literally 10. I'm doing overnights. It's 10. I can't afford more than 10 cents. I battle a penny because that's all I can afford on the show. But this is textbook, and I mean textbook, patternicity. Look it up. Patternicity, right? To rephrase that for those of you a little slow in the back of the room, it is something that we all do, finding meaningful patterns in meaningless noise. And I've learned a few tricks over the years as I've gotten older that the human brain is wired. We're all wired. We have different parents and DNA and all that, but we're all wired to look for familiarity, right? And meaning in things that are abstract, right? Like this. And for those of us that do the ancient art of gasbaggery, this is a battle, a talking point that is as old as time itself. One of the great hokey, lazy talk radio talking points in sports talk radio. Rust versus rest. Rust versus rest. It's after the fact reporting, since these teams all lost. It's rust. You see, the teams would have been better off playing. Now, when the opposite happens, suddenly it's an advantage. I'll give you an example. I like baseball. I don't want to say that too loud. People get upset when I say that, but I like baseball. Not as much as I used to like baseball, but I like baseball. So watching the baseball playoffs, for several years, the talking point was, these teams that have the top record, they're punished. They have to wait to play, and they have time off. And where were the people complaining this year? That ended because, I say this year's 2025, but last year's playoffs in October in 2024, the postseason, when the Yankees made the World Series and the Doyers also got her done. These are the top teams in the sport, and they got it done. Both of them got to the World Series. Dodgers winning, but they had all that rest. Well, I mean, what is that? They had all the rest, and they won. So that goes away. And then I'll guarantee you next year, Dodgers are going to win 100 games, and they'll be the top team in the National League. And if they go out and ride the vomit comet in the first round they play, it'll be back. Well, you see, they should have lost a few more games. Blah, 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 blah. It's the patternicity of it all. It's the patternicity. Plus, we all love ball busting, and it's whoever loses. I know why they lost. It's not that they sucked. It's they sucked because it's not their fault. They sucked and didn't perform well. It's the reality. Well, it's not. It's out of their control. That's what it is. Out of their control. Yeah, that's the ticket. That's the ticket. Sure.